So, hey, Sherry, welcome back to the ActivateCX podcast. It's good to have you back, my friend.
Thank you very much. Excited. We have some really great topics to talk about today.
We do. CRM is something that I became very involved with in about 2005 with one of my companies, and we absolutely needed to have a CRM solution. And at that point in time, I really looked at Salesforce. Microsoft Dynamics was just kind of getting in the game. That they were a relatively new player. Sugar CRM was another one. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember that. That was very much on-prem at the time. It was a period of time of really kind of working on it internally at first, and then folding that out to being something that we do for other people. But it's amazing how at that time it was kind of a nice to have, but now it's a must have. You have to have a CRM if you're going to manage your organization. In fact, it's a core component of the enterprise stack. But shockingly, over those 20 years, I still see the same mistakes in how people buy it, how people implement it, and then how they feel about it. After doing all of that, there's a really big gap between the relationship of what they expected and then what they experienced. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, a lot of it just goes down to the way people think about it. Everyone in life is looking for a quick fix to a big problem. And people often think of CRM as the same way, a magic wand that's going to solve all of your customer interaction issues. It's going to boost your sales, give you productivity, improve customer relationships. And it's something that would eventually do that, but nothing in life is that straightforward, right? It takes planning, implementation, proper processes to help you get there. And people go through with this myth that a CRM is super simple, implementation isn't very hard, and a lot of it has to do with vendors that will promise the world and more in order to sell their solutions
Yeah.
and then actually deliver something very, very different. So the difference between expectation and reality tends to be very, very large. You often feel in a CRM that one CRM fits everything, but every business, as we know and we've consulted with, has unique and different needs. So the key is truly customization when it comes to implementation. These just aren't things people think about. You say data or you think data when it comes to a CRM, but you don't think of what's the quality of data that I'm putting in the system. If you put in garbage, you're going to get garbage out. So it really comes to how you plan your solution in order to really get something effective.
It's a framework. It is a finished product in the fact that it's a product that allows you to customize your workflow or how your business is to operate. So they create a beautiful framework that has the appearance, even when it's demoed, of being done. But when you get it and you bring it in and you look at it and you go, oh, this is not done. I really need to think through how this is going to work. And so what happens is a series of incremental, I would have to say maybe relatively non-strategic tactical moves, because it's easy to add a field. It's easy to add an object. It's easy to update a screen. And so there is a real true sense that you are moving forward, no doubt, but you may be moving forward to a place you don't want to be. I mean, ultimately, you relieve a little bit of pain to receive some pain later. It's a really interesting dynamic because, like you said, the way that it's being sold, it looks like it's done. It's rope. You can create a ladder. You can create a noose. Some of the ladders become nooses later on. It's a very kind of wonky and pear-shaped journey for people as they go through it. Ultimately, that plug and play simplicity that you mentioned is a big myth. I've got my CRM. I have somebody that knows how to use it inside. I have somebody that can administer it. And it feels like progress. And in some sense, it really is. But it's something that is so big and so important to the organization that you get right. That's where the gap is. You can't really look back at the way CRM is being sold because there's so much information out there already to give you insights and ideas as to how it actually works. It's exciting when you see it for the first time that you get caught up in the fact that we may actually start solving problems.
Yeah, the bells and whistles are very attractive. The UI looks very good. Everything's easy to kind of move around. But when you jump into it, if your implementation's wonky or you haven't really thought of the process from an organizational perspective, there are so many different players that are going to end up using your CRM, right? It's going to be your sales support, your sales team, your marketing team, your executives. Unless you think of it from everyone's lens and have that when it comes to the implementation, you're always going to be doing mini patches there, fixes for them, and your implementation that should have been quick and easy is going to end up taking you years, and you still get nowhere.
It's true. And what's funny is that the ability to affect change inside the application, there's two holes that you look at. One is configuration, and the other one is customization. And I find that those two words become conflated when people talk about a CRM. And probably 90% of the work that's done on a CRM by somebody that has one, has an administrator internally, is maybe even just had their fingers in the pie themselves working on it, is really configuration
Yeah.
and using some of the tools that create customization, but truly aren't software developers in there building anything. That contributes to kind of some of the random acts of digital that occur inside of the system itself.
Completely agreed. And it all comes from kind of that lack of your overall go to market strategy, right? If you
Hmm.
don't understand what your customers need, you lose off right at the start, right? If you're looking to implement a smart CRM, you should have clear goals, clear objectives. Your outcomes should be measurable. You should actually have all of your different stakeholders bought in, meaning marketing, sales, executive, everyone should be involved and aware of what you're doing. Your implementation should be broken up into phases, meaning you can't do everything in the first day. You got to break it down into phases, make sure they're measurable, but stay agile, meaning if something in the market changes or the business changes, it's easy for you to kind of change your philosophy. Make sure you have training available. And to me, the most important part is take feedback as you do implementation, take feedback from your stakeholders, and continuously improve your solution. The beauty about software is the customization, development is never done. There's always room for improvement, and you always want things to get better over time.
Mm. That's a good point. Probably more than 50% of the initiatives we get involved with around CRM are refactoring. And that's the outcome, the ghost of Christmas future, so to speak, that people will encounter when they roll out a CRM, because these phases you just described are not rich enough in detail when they go to start. Typically, it's an outline. That outline could be bullet pointed. It may be 2 or 3 pages. That's great for giving an idea. But if you look at the software development world, you'll go through a very deep discovery and you will do business requirements that will evolve into technical requirements because somebody's going to have to do this.
No, and the kind of design documents or functional specifications that you and I usually create include detailed personas, what the requirements of each particular roles is. Everything is done in a very strategic way to ensure our end goals kind of align. And it's only once we're done kind of detailed documentations, questions and surveys with end users and customers, do we actually start the journey of implementation. And that one step is usually very rushed by consumers or missed altogether. And you just have this final product that now you're thinking, how do I plug it into sales? How do I plug it into customer experience versus having it the other way around?
Hmm. That's right. And you can actually end up very quickly with a computerized manual system or a manual computer system. I think one of the things that's really important around a CRM, if it's done correctly, is it does give a sense of predictability to the funnel. So if you think of, on one side, you've got the sales component. So you've got a group of people that are top of funnel to close, and then a customer service component, which is really all about adoption, advocacy for the client. And so they're different sides of the same coin, but understanding, like you said, the personas, how they're going to use this, what are the outcomes, what's the data predictability. On the sales side, we're thinking, what's the probability of a close? And if you think about a sales manager working with their sales team, Many times you'll see them roll out a CRM and nothing changes in their calls with their sales agents. It's the same discussion. What was your last conversation? Where do you think this is going? Have you tried this? If your CRM is capturing all these things, all those questions are asked and answered before you ever get into that. And there's data predictability around all of it. But yet
Yeah.
many people create the same system that they're doing daily as if they're pushing paper.
So why does one want a CRM, right? You want to improve your processes, you want to become more efficient, and a lot of that is automation, meaning a lot of the manual work that's done by your sales team should be automated. As a manager, at the very least, even keeping AI aside, you should have reporting and dashboards available where you see KPIs for your team front and center all the time. Very, very easy to do. On the other hand, then you have AI where you now have predictive models available. You have advanced insights that you can do. You have the ability to build out your different types of chatbots. Like, there's so much you can do to make both predictions better, make your analytics stronger, and really provide the best customer experience possible.
That's right. And what's interesting is when we first started using it, Sherry, and I feel this is a little bit of a blessing. I had the opportunity to use this inside of my own company. I was thinking, well, what can we do to understand this customer process, this sales process better? I know that what we wanted to do was one, we wanted to shorten our sales cycles. Number two, we wanted to increase our probability of closes. The third thing is, were we offering all we needed to offer on that particular sale? So did we have attach to it? And then once we did have the client in that verbal offer agreement, and now we're sending out everything that was contractual, invoices, and then all the way back down through to procurement on the backside of it. How could we shorten all of those cycles so that we didn't have a point of friction or a single point of failure, or we could collapse that process as well? And all of that, we used the CRM to dial in all of those processes. And it gave us incredible predictability. It changed the conversations that we had with the sales team because now we didn't have to ask them. We could see, and then we could ask a question. Well, why don't we have this on here? That is one of the things that is available inside of the system if you're aware of it, if you're trying to turn that crank. But if you're not aware of that, you could miss it altogether.
And it comes from defined goals, right? You knew exactly what you wanted to get out of your system. So when you had implementation, you had those goals in mind. Most people want automation and prediction.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily a goal, right? You got to be very specific in terms of exactly what you want. Just wanting prediction and going with a fancy new CRM and hoping that it gives you that will actually give you very like it's not just a tool, right? The CRM needs a massive cultural change within your organization. Everyone needs to think of how their daily work process will now change utilizing a CRM, whether you're in sales, whether you're in your marketing. That human element is super important when it comes to just CRM work.
That's an important point that you bring up because it's this whole people process technology thing just keeps coming to root in everything that we talk about, from CX to AI to self-service, all of these things. And it's the same thing with the CRM, which is part of the customer experience platform stack, I believe. You're really trying to affect behaviors across the organization. And then also too, understanding certain behaviors. If a salesperson is laser focused on net new business, then their job is getting onto calls and working with clients and prospects. And if you're inundating them with tons of data entry, they're going to fight against it. They're not going to do it. They just will not, as much as you plead for them and everything else. So understanding human nature, building in processes and automation that support things, whether it's the way to record and translate a
Yeah,
conversation and have that data pulled and have that be part of an AI inspection that generates
trust.
information and status changes. That to me is important because it is really hard to change human behavior. We can count on certain levels of human behavior. It may not be the things that we want to count on necessarily, but we can count on certain things. And this is where technology can be a great help.
Completely agreed. And we've encountered similar situations where we've done integrations with things like Ring Central, where you want to empower resources to use their phone system within their CRM. And in that case, we were doing Microsoft Dynamics, and it had kind of transcription, tagging, everything all built in to empower your sales team to do more with less work. You don't want to put a bigger burden on them. You want to make their lives easier. That's where you're going to get the benefit.
Yeah. Employee experience is a big part of customer experience. And what's interesting about the CRM is because it became part of this enterprise stack component, and a really critical part of it is that it became this source of truth for the customer. So pre CRM, the source of truth was all over the place. And it was maybe in your accounting system, there was a certain source of truth. And maybe in one of your operation and billing systems, a source of truth. And maybe somewhere in a notes component, maybe in a drive. Now really the CRM is kind of the rally point for it. But like, why is it still so messed up?
Organizations inherently, or departments, tend to have silos. Most departments don't work very well with each other, and it may be because there's a competitive nature between them, or just that organizational culture doesn't exist. And what that means is every department has their own strategic objectives, and then every department comes up with their own budget for their own solutions. And we've often seen this in organizations where you're implementing the same solution in different departments instead of using the same one. And what that does is you now have data inconsistencies, meaning one department may be inputting different sets of data, another department may be doing something differently. Because there's no strategy between them, you may have duplications of data, you may have different types of interfaces. A lot of departments end up working with different vendors as well, meaning one department may lock in for a 5-year contract with one vendor, whereas the organization may be trying to do a global shift working with one particular vendor and one particular solution. The gap in having kind of that comprehensive collaborative strategy is why the solution ends up being so messed up.
So I agree with what you're saying there. I think there's kind of an interesting CRM hack when you think about these incongruencies. Let's say, for example, you're a company and you have a core financial application, or you have a core app. Maybe you are actually a SaaS company and you're building an application that obviously your customers are going to use. And they could be, it doesn't matter, B2C, B2B. But one of the things that you can do ahead of time, knowing that a CRM is part of your ecosystem, and at some point in time, you're going to need this integration that you just walk through. You can actually look at, I mean, you don't even have to really choose ahead of time, but it's not too bad to say, well, we'll go with Salesforce, or we're going
Mhm.
to be going with Microsoft Dynamics CRM. But they have an object structure around accounts and contacts and opportunities and activities. It's already laid out. If you are going to build an application, you don't need to create some sort of mystical, wonderful, innovative approach to how you're going to track that customer data. You just need to know that at some point in time, there is a North Star out there that you're going to need your customer facing people to be working. And if you can move the customer information across and bring it up into that CRM, that's immensely valuable. And there's another side to it as well, that if you think about it, the overwhelming majority of the ecosystems out there that are building products, that they say, well, we want to attach to the biggest brands, Microsoft, Salesforce, in the marketplace. They're all building their applications to be in alignment with it. So when you build alignment for your custom application to one of these CRMs, in a de facto way, you're aligning now with hundreds, if not thousands, of other applications out there inside of the stack. Why people don't do this from the beginning, I don't know, but it's like a dirty little secret, little hack that you can use that most people don't employ, but will change your world, not 6 months from now, but probably 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah. No, and it's an interesting way to think about it, just because at its core, all CRMs work in the same way, right? Whether you think about HubSpot, whether you think about Dynamics or Salesforce, the fundamentals of it, the objects tend to be very similar. They have very similar types of automation that they offer. It just depends on how you go about building your solution, what the knowledge of your particular internal team is, or that specific vendor is, and that's going to dictate kind of your probability of success or the lengthiness of your implementation cycle, really.
It is interesting how, again, there is this incredible data challenge across all of the different components in the enterprise stack. And it feels like when we've gone in to do refactoring for clients, the sense that we get from our customer is that they're sitting on a ticking time bomb. There's almost a sense of impending doom. They know it's not working for them, and they feel at some particular point in time there's going to be a massive failure around it. Do you think that this is a part of the downstream outcome that we talk about from not having that go to market plan, but a plan is as good as a plan is until you implement it and become disciplined around it? Is it the discipline of the CRM that is kind of the Achilles heel?
I think you nailed it. So discipline usually comes around building practices that are researched, intelligent, and something that you can repeat. The moment you lose your discipline is where you encounter things like compromised data. If you have inaccurate data in your CRM, you're going to make bad decisions.
Hmm.
If your data is decaying faster than the data that you're adding in your CRM, that means again you're going to be making bad decisions, poor decisions, or decisions without seeing kind of the entire picture. The
Hmm.
moment you start having bad data, poor decisions, all of a sudden your users no longer trust the system. If the users start getting frustrated, your usability goes significantly lower. Now, even the benefits that you were getting before of some data at all seem to go away. Your customer experience starts getting hurt, and you miss opportunities for growth and insight, and that's what all comes down to, right? As an organization, you want to grow, you want to become smarter, and if you don't maintain that discipline, eventually those are the two objectives that you're going to fail at.
We're writing an interesting story here. As an aside, I like to cycle, and in Austin, where I live, there's just so much beautiful scenery. But just the way that roads are architected and just the rate of change around, there's so many pitfalls. And I remember long ago, my sister and I were going out for a ride, and I said, "Hey, this is going to be a great day to see Austin on a bicycle, or as I like to call it, a thousand ways to die." And and she just started laughing until we came back, and she goes, "Wow, that was no joke. You really have to have your head on a swivel." And I feel the same way is true with CRM because there's very low barriers to entry. And in fact, when you look at it, it's the typical kind of thing where you look at pricing. There's a beginners or a basic or a pro. Pro is never the same as the end is never pro. It always starts with pro. I
Yeah,
don't know why that is. And then you have a developer edition, and then you have an enterprise edition. So I'm kind of describing a Salesforce type
yeah,
situation. Very, very easy to read. Feature, feature, feature. Price $90 per seat, $120 per seat, $165 per seat. You think that's how much it's going to cost me,
yeah, yeah.
right? But that's not how much it costs us. If you're going to roll out a CRM correctly, you have to have the reality-based understanding of what does it truly cost to own a CRM. Do you think that that also is one of the contributing factors to why people just buy it, throw it out there, problem solved, and then get a little bit rankled when they figure out what they need to really do to make it work?
So what people think about, you're right, it's seat costs. But
Yeah.
what you need to think about is your total cost of ownership. That is everything all encompassed, not just a subscription cost, meaning this would have implementation, customization costs, this would have integrations with other systems, data migration, user training and adoption, some scaling efforts, data quality. And you can't get this number from just looking at Salesforce's pricing. You need to go through a proper needs assessment in
Mhm.
order to understand which kind of module do you need, what are the add-ons, what the customization would look like. You need to do some research and planning, And most importantly, you need to work with some experts. You need to consult some experts. And by no means does that mean they need to do the entire implementation lifecycle for you, but at
Mm-mm.
least vet your plan with someone that's done that a few times, that's learned from their mistakes, that can at least guide you to ensure you understand the total cost and you're not just left with an opportunity cost at the end of your implementation.
Great conversation, Sherry. I think that we're big CRM fans. We know that the potential is there, but to reach that potential, like really everybody has to rally around doing it the right way, a better way.
And it all starts with a conversation, and the conversation honestly doesn't have to lead anywhere. It can just be in us kind of talking about problems, understanding what a potential client might be looking for. We love to provide advice, we love to share the expertise whenever we have it, and everything just starts off kind of with that one conversation.
I agree. It always starts off with a good conversation, just like this one. Sherry,
Absolutely.
thanks for your time today.
My pleasure, thank you for inviting me.